Welcome to another exciting episode of BS&BEER Canada. My name is Aaron Jones. I am a carpenter and a builder on Grand Manan Island in New Brunswick, Canada. Building science enthusiast, blower door nut, and tonight, besides being a serious flashing enthusiast, I am drinking a Greystone Pale Ale. And we're not going to get that, but trust me, it's good. My closest neighbor, Connor.
Hey everybody, my name is Connor Malloy. I'm a designer, builder, and educator in Toronto. I teach at George Brown Polytechnic, where we teach young carpenters how to build better. And I run a consultancy called Supernormal, helping builders and professionals train and detail high-performance envelopes. So I'm on like the low side here. It's called Party Dad. It's a lovely, I mean, it fits me. Ugly sneakers, a low alcohol session IPA. It's kind of my vibe right now. And that's from Nickelbrook. My next neighbor is Jeremiah.
Hello, everyone. I am Jeremiah Summer. I am a builder and renovator in Southwest Ontario. Our team uses building science to guide a lot of our decision making and a lot of our project analysis. And flashing is a big part of that. So it's quite exciting to be part of Flash Me Day. I think I was actually on a canoe trip last year and just left some slides for interpretation. So maybe this year I'll be able to explain them a little from firsthand experience. So I'm going to shoot it to the middle of the country over to Justin.
Awesome. Good evening, everyone. Justin Ott from Saskatchewan, here in the prairies, Flatlander, as everyone seems to call me. I don't know why. They should go to northern Saskatchewan. It's not so bad. Yeah, so custom homes renovations, building envelope first approach when we're designing our projects. And yeah, just really looking to build or bring high performance building back to the prairies where it kind of originated. So yeah, so excited to be part of the Flash Me movement, and hopefully we can do some educating and bring some more awareness to what flashings are intended to do. I'll shoot it off to Sean.
What are you drinking, Justin?
Oh, sorry, just a Yeti full of water.
Yeah, don't worry. I will match you with a Yeti, a good old Etro Yeti, because I will be on a paddleboard pretty quick here as we wrap up the show because you can see it's still sunny here on the West Coast. I'm Sean Sadamore, retrofitter, air tightness enthusiasm, passionate about prefab resilient buildings that of course should be affordable, and grateful to be here today because we're going to dive into flashing. As the shirt says, mine's a bit wrinkled, so again, I gotta iron it out before the big official day that kicks off on the 26th. But let's dive into it, Aaron. Let's dive into all the fun flashings that we all love and are happy about and want people to make sure they're flashing their buildings properly so that water can go down and out.
Just before we kick this off, Sean, I think we have to take a quick second and check in with our foreign correspondent, Mr. Mark Willey.
Well, on everyone's radar today is International Flashing Awareness Day across the world. International Flashing Awareness Day. That's the only message.
Thank you, Mark. And with that, I think we will try and kick this off because this is literally my favorite holiday. And yes, folks, it is a real holiday now. International Flashing Awareness Day is the 6th annual. August 26th is the day, and we have to take just a quick second to thank all the partners that help International Flashing Awareness Day be a success. We've got Benjamin Obdyke, York Flashings, Innotek, Sashco, Tapco Tools, Sega, Huber Woods, and I'm probably forgetting somebody, but yes, without all these sponsors, this literally would not be possible. Side note, if you head over to flashingdetails.ca and you click on the menu button, you can submit a flashing detail for review. So something that you want some flashing detail that you would like somebody else to critique, or perhaps point out something that could make it more functional, more buildable, more durable. On September 3rd, Steve Basic, Grant Watkin, Mike Girton, and myself will be going over your flashing details with Fine Home Builder. If we're going to talk about flashings, we should probably take a second and recognize that the code has a lot to say about flashings. Now, we can go over minimize the ingress of precipitation into the assembly, prevent the ingress of precipitation into the interior space. And that's basically saying we want to keep water out of our buildings. But it's not just 927. We start at 9762 and we go right through part 9. There are little notes on flashing scattered throughout the entire part 9. Literally, there's a lot to learn about flashings and a lot of nuances and how it integrates with your wall assembly, with your roof assembly, and different parts of the building. We're getting ready to show some good flashing details. Please note with a PH. Now, while this is a slide that we borrowed from Green Building Advisor, and it says the cap is pitched 10 to 15 degrees, which there's nothing wrong with. 7 degrees actually is more than enough for most situations. But this is a relatively good head flashing, and we'll get more into that later. But Jeremiah, if you wanted to hop in here and talk about what you've got going on here.
Sure. Okay, so this is kind of one of my favorite flashing details because it's one of the first intersections when you're working your way up the wall, or basically the first sort of main intersection up coming up the wall that needs to be highlighted, not only for dealing with water that's hitting the wall or coming down the wall, but even a bit of splashback from, water hitting the ground and having a chance to bounce up. And one of the things too that I think that needs to be highlighted with flashing details, because we're usually talking about, I think most people would associate flashing with like a metal flashing of some sort, even though there are a variety of materials that can do that. But the way we like to approach any metal flashing in particular is that it's kind of a secondary flashing material, more of a shield in front of whatever might be behind there. So whether it's a head flash or whether it's a base wall flash, like is shown on the slide here, in this particular case, the Fentrum, which is doing a really good job of air sealing in behind there, is also a form of flashing. It's just not that durable to hold up to UV and environmental elements that it would be subjected to. So we need to protect that so it can do its primary job of managing for air. But during construction, that's keeping water from running into there. And then as we move further along, we can add this piece of metal to sort of kick any water out and down and out away from the building. And then eventually, obviously, protect siding from splash up. And this is just kind of how our crew does it. Essentially a piece of metal flashing. It doesn't show any exterior insulation, but this flashing could be, project out from the wall of the building, however far it really needs to kind of accommodate what's going above it. So obviously the flashing is placed low enough so that it covers the intersection between the base of the wall and the top of the foundation, which hides the tape that's in there. And then, of course, we're going to tape that flashing again with something like, in this case, a zip tape, so that we have, a really good continuity down that wall. And then from there, we can start to add whatever other elements we need to the exterior of that wall, in this case, strapping for a rain screen. And this just sort of shows the finished assembly before we can start to add the good stuff, the siding and all the things that most people actually pay attention to. And this is just showing the venting that we use to complete the base wall flashing and integrated rain screen detail.
Very cool, Jeremiah. A lot of good details there. Connor.
Hey, hey. So to work our way up the building, I'm going to show some details we did on our last full house build. One of the challenges was we wanted to build a relatively barrier-free homes. That means we have no steps at any of the entry doors, but still had the primary objective of shedding water and keeping things down, out, and away. So the approach we took, if you flip to the next page, Gina. Oh, so we start with a condition where we have a slab on grade on the interior. And to get any kind of shedding properties in front of the door to keep snow buildup, leaf, water, we wanted to build in recesses. So the first part of our flashing starts with the top of the stem wall. So this is a 4-foot stem wall. The slab gets poured inside of this, inside a insulation perimeter. So it's important at the slab edge to recess the formwork to get that 5-degree slope. And then to stop capillary, we cover that with Extoseal to get our laps to work properly. At the door itself, the way it works is this door sits, and this is where I think it's important on any project. If your team's not familiar with the door products, which are sometimes clients specified, is try and get a door cut, a sample to your site to understand how it bears, how flat the underside of this door is. This door had a unique sill profile where the weight of the door is carried by, let's call it the inside half. So what we're able to do was lay a back dam and then a subsill slope in front of it. So where you see the Lexel going down, that is actually like a half or quarter-inch raise where the door sits on that. And then its sill, which carries no weight, floats over top. So if water gets down underneath, it can come out. The photo in the top right shows you the condition when the door is installed. So there's a bead of Lexel towards the interior. The door actually sits in sandwiches. So that's for air. And then any water that gets driven into the underside of the door or the door fails, it can drain out underneath the door. And then if there's any snow buildup, it can then drain out, down, and away. The bottom corner shows you that condition where the door can cleanly drain. What we want to do is we have decorative finishes on top. So we want to protect this subsill flashing. So we have a bent middle detail. So to maintain that drainage gap, if the door fails or the underside fails, we both want water to drain on top and come down out away from the top side of the door, but we want it also drain from the underside. So to do that, we thought, okay, how do we float this piece of bent aluminum? We just ran beads of sealant every 16 inches. It dries pretty rigid. That gives us our 1/8-inch gap. That was easy, carpenter approved. So now our flashing tucks in the bottom side of the door. It sheds bulk water from the top. Any water that gets behind it or the door fails can also drain out behind it and underneath. And the next photo shows you what it looks like when the door is complete. And we've got two conditions. One is we, to get 0 steps here, we float the deck on top of that flashing. So the flashing doesn't get stepped on. That's why we're permitted to just use those beads of sealant as a spacer. And the deck floats over top, connects right into the door. And we have about a 3/4-inch gap, which is enough for an outside mat. The same condition we have at the front of the house. Do the next one, Gina. It's the same process. This is the front door. It's a much bigger door unit. Same condition, but now we have pavers. So it starts with that same cut where we recess down the top of the foundation. It's flashed on 5 degrees for positive drainage. The door goes in with a whole bunch of complication because doors are complicated, but that's premise is still the same. Any water that comes down the face of the door is allowed to drain lower than the sill and then drain out down away. Because we have pretty soft tapes, we've got both Wig Glove here on the door for air sealing and water management, and then Extoseal, they're not that tough. And because we wanted to actually put some of the paving materials up right up to the door, we use blueskin on top just as a sacrificial layer to protect those pieces, and then flash down with 430 gray for nice connections. And the last picture shows you the condition where the pavers are done. They're sloped again on that 5-degree slope. So water hits the door, drains down. If it gets below, it goes down out and away still. through all those permeable aggregates. So the premise here for us is really making sure that we have, like Jeremiah said, two ways of managing water. There's the flashing that you see on top, and there's this sub-treatment with positive slopes that allow us to get water down and away if we have failure.
All right, Justin.
All right, so this is one of our extended exterior jam details when we had some pretty extensive exterior insulation on this build. It was 4 inches of exterior mineral wall. We had 3/4 strapping that you can see was fastened through these Cascadia fiberglass clips. And on top of this system was actually a paper-backed wire for a stucco and stone facade on this build. So we had a pretty robust cladding system going on this. And so it was challenging for us. We had some arch window tops, a couple things to decide what we were going to do to create that flashing detail around these windows. And so what we finally landed on was these custom-made aluminum window jamb extensions. So I believe it was about 1/8 aluminum that was all custom CNC cut, folded, welded. In some of these photos you can't really see, but it does have your I think we had a 7 to 10 degree slope on both the bottom and the top. And what you can't see is we actually raised the sides on this window buck to create end dams on the window as well. So it was all fully integrated with your slope sills, your end dams, everything all in these window bucks. They were actually beautiful, all powder coated and done. And then again, some of the details that we had to work out was, obviously bringing these back into the window, we had a sealant line around these windows, and we wanted to have a backup system so that if that ever failed, we'd have a way for water to come down and out, which is where you see those floppy bits now at that window edge that we draped up and over top of the insulation line and back into that rain screen area. What we've found on some of our new builds or retrofits when we have this really heavy exterior is a lot of these window details that, there's multiple ways to skin the cat. But in this circumstance with the arch tops and the heavy cladding, we decided to go to these aluminum window extensions that we could have powder coated and include all the nice details that we wanted to have all in one. So that's it for that one.
All right, Sean.
Well, one of the things that I love is mock-ups, and this is a particular mock-up that has been at BCIT over, I guess, 10 years now. And so what I love about this mock-up is, there's a few details that, we could say that has improved, but part of the mock-up is this sill flashing that actually comes from the window manufacturer, so European window. And one of the things that, I loved about this particular mock-up is that some of our local passive house manufacturers here in BC have started to put in that bit of a groove so that any type of flashing at least has a chance to slide in. But the fact that you can get a high performance passive house window and get your sill flashing is very unique. And of course, we're going to get into this, the end damming and the fact that it comes with an end dam and really ensures that with the proper slope and the proper placement, that you're not going to get water getting in behind the window. And even with the window having the right weep holes so that drains onto the sill flashing, you're going to be able to get it out. So I definitely advocate for people to, make sure your window, can kind of communicate with your rough opening and, maybe have a chance to properly put in a flashing that can then tie into your window and just give you that extra layer of defense. Because we're kind of always talking about belts and suspenders. And so being able to, have this piece that really ties into your window, your window is already dealing with being the air barrier, the vapor control layer, the insulator, but managing water and being able to ensure that water will get down and out at a very critical point. We talk about air tightness at footings to walls, walls to windows, walls to roofs, and then of course all the penetrations. And here's a point where you're really ensuring that water will not get into your building with having this prefabricated sill flashing. So one of my favorite mock-ups at BCIT, but the fact that it came with this extra piece of love just still makes me keep loving this mock-up. So there you are, prefabricated sill flashings.
Thank you, Sean. All right, this is a kind of a little bit of a how-to for a basic head flash with NDAMs. And one of the beautiful things about a basic head flashing is we often think of it for windows, we think of it for doors, but it can be literally used on top of any through wall penetration. So any type of mounting block, whether it be for HVAC, electrical, a pipe penetration, anything that goes through your wall, you could put a basic head flashing on it. It's just a matter of changing the size of the different legs to suit whatever type of reveal you require. But start out with a basic cut, something like this. So essentially you have a 1-inch leg off of the main flashing, and then a second 1-inch leg that has been 45'd. We fold that around underneath, and then we grab it with folding pliers, and we have a little bit of metal origami, and we just start rotating that up. Don't want to close it up right away. We want to have a nice 90-degree upstand, but we don't want to cause that crease to change how our change the slope. So if you close it up too soon, you'll change the slope. And as you can see, you've got the 45 here. Grab that with your folding pliers and you can pull that around. Should note that at this point, the needle nose pliers in that fold, that will allow you to play with how much material is there to ensure that you maintain that 7-degree slope on your head flashing. Pull it over. There we have it. Just requires a little clip to clean it up, and we have a completed head flashing. Now, Justin's already talked about this, and I knew we were going to have some overlap on this, but this is a custom bent exterior flashing for 4 inches of exterior insulation. And this happens to be aluminum as well, but this is gutter coil. So a heavy gauge aluminum flashing. And again, NDAMs, 7-degree slope on everything. But I think we're going to see more and more of these type of installations where we have essentially a flashing ring that surrounds the window. And not just on new construction as exterior insulation becomes more and more commonplace, but on retrofits as well. It's not unusual to add exterior insulation to a building when you're changing the siding, but you might not necessarily be changing the windows. And part of the reason that we chose to do it this way on this project with a flanged window was because there's going to be more and more retrofits out there. And this was a great place to showcase that you can build essentially an exterior flashing ring, install it on the window, and still leave it renovatable. If you notice in the top right slide, we've got a 4-inch gap in between the already installed insulation and that flashing ring. That just allows for serviceability in the future. As we move forward, someday somebody's going to have to replace that window. When that window requires replacement, they're going to be able to remove the siding trim. Then they'll be able to remove a portion of wood furring that makes up the rain screen. They'll be able to pull out a 4-inch swath of insulation around that window. They'll be able to remove that trim ring, or excuse me, the aluminum flashing ring, and then they'll be able to get at the tape and the fasteners holding the window in. And 4 inches, while it's tight, once that window is out, it still gives you enough room to reinstall a window, tape flash it to make that water and airtight connection, before reinstalling a aluminum flashing ring and putting the insulation back together, all without having to touch the siding. No reason to touch the siding. Just strictly renovate or repair the piece you need to look after. Justin.
All right, I wanted to throw these on here because when it comes to penetrations and kind of sequencing, especially when it comes to different elements such as exterior insulation, rain screens, your cladding, this was kind of a demonstration. It was actually I'll throw my brother under the bus on this one. He wasn't quite sure where some of his penetrations were coming out, but he wanted to get all his insulation and strapping and everything on his house. And we were kind of chatting and we're like, wow, it's not a big deal. We'll just open up the siding and figure it out kind of as you go. So as you can see, he had a detail that he needed to bring out. I believe it was a dryer vent, a new line set for his air conditioner, and then the electrical for the air conditioner. So it was pretty easy. He just went and made his cut line on the siding where he was going to have his mounting block. Got back through the insulation. He did his EPDM details where all of his pipes were going to come out. He sealed that all up nice so that the plumbers could slide all that stuff out. As you can see, he reinstalled all his insulation and had his mounting block and everything kind of ready for those guys to come back, right? So, I thought this was a neat photo because a lot of times we put so much thought into like all of this detail up front and the sequencing and stuff. But it's also neat because in a lot of circumstances, we may be in a position where we're retrofitting or adding things to homes, and just understanding how you got to kind of dissect, resequence, and then bring everything back to kind of where it is, right? So I just thought it was a really neat photo of kind of showing all those dissecting all those different layers, getting back, doing the right job, getting all the details, and then bringing it back to the finished product.
Very cool, Justin. I agree. The humble kick-out flashing. I see this missing more often than not. And anytime that you have a roof wall intersection where the roof basically starts dumping water down the sidewall, you want to make sure that you collect that water and divert it away from the wall, put it into the eavesdropping, and make sure it goes down, out, and away, and doesn't end up in your siding, in your sheathing, rotting the wall out behind the eavesdropping. I'm not sure of any place that actually looks for a kick out flashing. I'm sure there is some place where it is actually required, but locally, nobody checks to see if there's a kick out flashing, and it's just such a small detail that rarely gets the attention that it deserves. Photo is from one of Steve Basic's jobs, and Green Building Advisor has the little detail that we're seeing here down on the bottom right. And lastly, so another wall penetration. This is also foreshadowing with a PH for next month's BS&BEER Canada. Nick will be joining us from Air Barrier Gaskets to talk about air tightness. Also, I know we're going to get into some questions and just some general conversation, but do not forget to head over to flashingdetails.ca, sign up for next year's Flash Me Day, and also submit your flashing details by the end of the month so that we can go over them with Fine Home Building Live on September 3rd. All right. Anybody want me to go back to any of those slides?
Well, first off, Aaron, we should just mention too is you're prepping on Flash Me Day to post your flashing, and additionally, then submit it for discussion for the competition. So you got to submit it twice so that we can discuss it. One on the day of the special holiday, and of course for the competition. Just to clarify. Oh,
I
and
appreciate it, Sean.
and speaking of clarifying, passive house doors are heavy. Have a friend whenever you're lifting a passive house door. This is your PSA for today, because otherwise you may slip and get a black eye. Just a little PSA. Yeah.
If you had your York flashing glasses on, would it saved you?
No, no. Landed right here. Right
Ooh.
there.
Well, we're
No.
glad you're still here.
Yep. Another
And the
story
door's
to
okay.
tell. Another story to tell from the fart shack. So it lives on.
And the door swings the right way now.
Does. It does.
So I don't see a comment quite yet or question yet. Maybe I can ask just a first question before we open it up, Aaron. So
Yep.
those are new renovations. So Jeremiah, you say you do renovations. Aaron, you do renovations. So would Justin. Can you speak to one area where you found you open out walls or buildings, you find a lot of water damage? We can go back and talk about the details we shared to highlight how to mitigate or limit that in the future. Can you just share one example of things you find often?
I'll go. Uh, Definitely around windows. I mean, it's really, really common because I think what I see a lot is that when I do see flashing, it's usually like a piece of metal flashing, and that's the only thing that's being relied on. And while it does a great job, there's nothing in behind the scenes that is kind of also as sort of a backup. And that's like just kind of, I think, a byproduct of when older buildings were done. There weren't some of the tapes and membranes, obviously, that we use now are so much more readily available. There was a time when a lot of that really didn't exist. So, but yeah, I would say Windows for sure. Coming in around the top and showing up and ugly spots on the bottom, and that would be the number one spot for us.
I would I would second Jeremiah, and I would say that subsill flashing is still like the biggest contributor to rotten buildings, like the, or I should say the lack of subsill flashing is still the largest contributor. Head flashing is great, but if the window itself fails or water gets in around somewhere else, that subsill flashing's ability to kick water out over top of whatever you're using for a WRB, if it's not there, it just goes down and through. The only other thing I would say is kick out flashings. Not every building has a eavesdrop or a gutter, but you can still put a kick out flashing on to divert it out away from the wall. It's just so worthwhile for you know the $2 of material and the 2-3 minutes of time to install it.
That would be another area on would be at roofs. But before things like the common like drip edges and stuff like that that we see now, even if we take a roof off that has that, you can tell that there wasn't one there at one point. And mind you, fascia's pretty like low on the priority list in terms of whether it failed. It's not a major risk to the building, quite the same as around a window, but that's definitely an area where there's usually rot for sure.
What about you, Justin?
Yeah, I mean, I would follow what Jeremiah and Aaron have said about, obviously your kickouts around your windows. I mean, the old saying is it's not if, it's when a window will fail, right? And normally people, aren't too keen on keeping maintenance going on their homes. So I would say, yeah, I mean, giving that assembly some chance. But just like even the penetrations, like we've renovated homes that are almost 100 years old, and we've also done some pretty extensive remediation work on homes that were less than 10 years old. And it's pretty much anywhere where you have an intersection between that exterior wall, right? Whether it's a penetration, a window, a roof line, anything that's intersecting that face of that wall. I mean, there's going to be a risk if it's not flashed properly that water is going to get down and in behind something, right? And a common thing we see here is a lot of stucco applications with a head flashing with no end dams, and all that water does is just drive it right behind. And of course, they haven't lapped anything properly, and it's just driving everything off the top of that stucco behind, and then it just rots all the way down those windows, right? Yeah, I mean, we've seen it all. I sent Aaron a really interesting photo the other day that we'll bring up next week.
We should have put it in. We really should have. It's
well,
too
I
late
figure
now.
it'll be good for next week. Yeah.
Yeah. But it honestly, it goes back to one of my favorite quotes, and it's, if it's not vertical, it needs a roof. That's it.
I don't have
we have to do it.
I don't have a photo of this one, Connor. So I'm thinking more of a framed building versus masonry for this failure point. And it's at the deck connections.
Yeah.
Typically it was felt paper, and in that area, maybe one additional layer of felt paper. And what happens is that ledger board gets so overlagged in that even the good attempts weren't good enough. And unfortunately, the water was the littlest part of those problems, because the porch pull-away is the danger point unless there's an added staircase or something holding it. But right there, if you were to just have that small little quick bend of flash there and then just put your felt paper back on top before you clad it out, you're talking $6 worth of material, and you lost an entire deck, let alone the interior damage.
That's the real kicker, is a lot of this is really inexpensive.
I like that you used the word kicker. I think that's the perfect way of saying it. A little kicker.
So I think this is a great segue into Greg's question. Greg's based in Toronto, and his question is: the flashing presented is his best he's ever seen. Amazing. What trade does this time fall under? Is it a window contractor, a siding contractor? I think to our questions, we showed a lot of things that either we've done ourselves, or we've designed ourselves, or we've managed. But conventionally, who do you think this falls under for? Let's start with your projects, and then let's pull backwards and say, let's say projects run by your colleagues in your own communities.
It depends.
Yeah.
It does depend.
I know it depends. Well, let's say more than 2 months.
I'm going to say
if you
on
touch
many
it, you own it.
on many projects, this is going to be classified as by others.
Yeah, you touch it, you own it. So the first person came through and they finished their portion. The next person's layering is now responsible unless it's been detailed who sequences it. If it's not, if you touch it, you own it regardless. So
I would agree with you, Mark.
I want to be more specific than it depends in that case, because the framer's done, but the framer on this project apparently is nothing to do with the windows. And the person that's doing the cladding has nothing to do with the windows. And that's only 3 of the people. So I think if you don't have it sequenced, then the person that touches it, hopefully before you, gave you the ability to have that extra $6 there for you to fix it.
So I'll give you an example on our projects, because we're in a bit of a growth phase where currently right now our team handles everything from foundation to framing to window installs to flashings to siding. We can do it all. And that's a lot of where our team is kind of, dialed all this in, and we've done different things. But we're kind of getting to the point where I can't get our team big enough, and we have to start letting aspects go. So then I think, okay, so what parts of these types of things do we let go, and who does that, right? So right now, we've still installed windows. We've still done head flashings. We've done our penetration blocks with our flashings, and then we'll let a siding crew come and put up the lap siding, right? But we haven't got to the point where we're letting them detail those certain things around all of that, right? Which is tough, because then we get into trying to educate the industry. Do you have a siding company that's interested slowing down, doing these details, and being able to be an extension of our team? Well, I feel like in our market, we don't have capacity for these guys to slow down, want to learn these details. They just want to go the way that they've always been doing it, right? And same thing I see in other home builders, where like the framers are coming in, they're framing the house, putting the windows in, and then they're walking away, right? So then you have now the siding crew coming in, whether it's a stucco crew, whether it's a cladding crew for lap siding, however, and they're the ones typically managing all of the flashings and the claddings, et cetera, that go around there. But I've still seen when those framers are dropping those windows in, they're kind of missing out on some of that sequencing, because they're just used to throw a bead of caulking, slap it in, and walk away, right? So it's really hard. And unless you have, for me, what I'm observing, unless you have a builder that's interested in actually like learning all of this for himself or themselves, and then having the trades educated to do all that different sequencing, and to have, hey, this is how we do every project, it's going to be hard, right? So
I would agree with that. That sounds almost exactly like our scenario and what we see here. We typically take care of everything enclosure related, and the few times when we have had someone else come in and do siding or some kind of exterior work, we've still done all the flashing work ahead of them, so that they can just do what they're used to doing, because it's otherwise it probably doesn't get done, or maybe not well.
So I came from the same background as my colleagues here. I grew up in a family business, and all the carpenters learned how to also have bend on a brake. So we brought the brake to site, and everyone installed a window. You also bent all your aluminum, and you detailed. It was about ownership. The way you have a flat roofer take ownership for these skylights, so they own the water management of the roof, right? For the callbacks. But you find as you scale, when I worked in Toronto with larger companies who subbed a lot more work out, I do find it starts with two things. One is your drawings, often window openings and a permit submission. The window openings to satisfy glazing percentages, access to daylight. The windows have to exist. They have to show how far they are back from the property line for a minimum distance. But aside from that, you're not mandated to show how you detail your windows. So a lot of drawings are missing those details. So is the sub who's hired to do window installation, are they clear on what's expected? So drawings, I think, can show what flashing looks like complete. All the flashings are drawn, they're detailed. You can see layers. I mean, CAD has the ability to do two lines beside each other, right? You can color things, right, for different things. So that starts. The second one is when you're subcontracting as a GC, is look at your scopes of work. Instead of sending out the drawings to yourself and saying, quote me on this, just give them a little short RFP. I need you to do head flashings with a 1-inch upstand. I need you to have a subsail flash with this turned up 6 inches. If that becomes a detail, you copy and paste that to all your RFPs, and now you have a contract document to both manage, because the drawings don't have those things, and then something to hold them to.
Yeah.
And once someone understands they're held to that expectation, one, they price it. So now they have time invested to do it, and they carry the right material. You sometimes find subs say, oh, I would have done this way if you told me that. Well, if the drawings don't have it, write it down somehow, and at least then they price it, include time, and now you can have a conversation that they missed something. So
Yeah.
I say, your team doesn't have to do it in-house, just it comes back to that pre-construction process.
Yeah. The other thing we notice here, and I don't know if it's the same everywhere, but a lot of people do the focus on the elements that they know are going to be inspected by a third party. And the third party, majority of the time, is the building department. And at least where we are, our building inspectors don't look at anything on on the exterior of the building whatsoever at any point in time. There's never a note. And so I think if that was, maybe a little bit higher priority on that end of things, people would get nervous about it and failing an inspection, and then would be a little bit more motivated to learn or take it a little bit more seriously. But I think a lot of times if people don't think it's going to be inspected, they go away and hope they don't ever get called back, which I don't know.
I think as we get into high performance becoming more mainstream and as air tightness becomes more commonplace, I think there's going to be room for an enclosure trade. There's going to be room for actually somebody to become a sub to pick up the slack that none of us really have time to teach everybody or are able to scale. It's going to be somewhere between the framer finishing and somebody installing the windows that they're going to start and then maybe come back after the windows, or maybe it'll be something that'll be picked up by window installers. I can't say, but I definitely see that if I was to tomorrow move to the Toronto area, if I went to builders and said, hey, I will look after the sequencing and I'll make sure that we're air and water tight, just let me get in here at this point and that point and we'll be there. I'm sure there's all kinds of builders that would jump right on board that just because they wouldn't have to deal with it and they know they would hit their numbers. So I think eventually you're going to see either existing subs pick this up as they've got a second crew that goes ahead of them before cladding and does this, or just as a standalone business. Like air barrier for the exterior.
I'd have to agree with that, Aaron. Like for us, that's literally what I'm looking at doing with our team, is making them almost specialized in these certain touch points of that project, and then letting other things go to those, like a framer or a basement guy. But then our guys are in there getting all the sequencing and doing those little touch points along the way, so that we can let the guys that do what they do very well all day long keep doing that, and then let our guys that understand these details just dial it in, right?
Got a question. Justin, who did your custom flashings? Was it a local shop?
Yeah, we had a custom, or like a local fab shop, do all that. So they came out, site measured, we showed them all the details that we want. They went back, they catted it all out, CNC cut it all, welded it, powder coated. It wasn't a cheap date, but it was really the only option for this project specifically. Yeah. They look so good though.
How are they how are they attached? They have like a flange that folded out.
They did, yeah. So we returned it with a flange, and then we were able to GRK them back into the structure beside, and then we retaped on the three sides, and then kind of tied it all back into the continuity. There was a little bit of thermal bridging that I was kind of worried about with them, but then overlapping our 4-inch insulation and stuff, I was like, this is like the lesser of all evils here. So
I'm got like a similar detail with that gutter coil that's being bent. And yeah, is it a thermal bridge? Well, yeah, but it's thermally broken on the inside as well. I don't think, is yours just a 2x6 wall or 2x8 wall?
2x8.
Okay, so still, it's got a long ways to go before it actually gets there.
Is
that's the
aluminum
worst
stock?
part of the project. Sorry, Mark?
It's aluminum stock?
Yes.
Okay, not even painted steel, aluminum stock.
Yeah.
Yeah, that connectivity there is not really a thermal bridge.
It's not that big a deal.
I want to raise a follow-up question. So Gray asked a question, which I think is a good one here. So a lot of us have talked about having our own teams, own crew. We're doing a lot of, probably Justin and Jeremiah, in-house training. Same thing, Aaron, working with your leads and your apprentices. At large, Greg has a question, which is what he's seen. The single biggest issue is teaching trades to care. Justin addressed this in his training. It's a huge issue to close the gap and perfection on possibilities detailing. What is your advice for young trades? Are your people even interested in high performance detailing? Are young people even interested in high performance detailing? Before I share my insight as an educator, I'd like to hear what you guys think.
I'm going to start with it depends, because everybody's different. Some people are interested in the details, and other people, they just want to go. So personality plays a role in this. But what I can say is if you have an apprentice and they make a mistake, if you fix it for them, they have learned nothing. If you get them to fix their own mistake and work through that process and take ownership, and you continue to build on that, where they actually own this little piece of the project, whatever it is, a window install, framing up a wall, it doesn't matter. It's they own it, all the pros, all the cons of that little piece, and you keep building on that in the not in the next project and the project thereafter. Eventually, you end up with a craftsperson. It takes time, and there's no magic pill to train somebody in 35 seconds. It it takes years to train somebody.
We have a pretty young, mostly young crew, and I think like our crew gets pretty stoked about some of these details. Like I think that the products that we have available to use help a lot. Like it's not that the things that we're doing look different than what they see when they're driving around and see other jobs on the go. And we kind of hype a lot of these things up and make it a big deal so that when we're all usually working on things together, at least initially, when we're teaching a detail or a sequence, and we make a pretty big deal about it. Like we get excited about it when we see one that looks something that looks really good or feel really confident in it, and I think that rubs off on everyone else, and they're all sort of striving to make folds better or make things look cleaner. And I think if you put an emphasis on that it's not just something that's going to be buried and nobody's ever going to see again, and treat it more like it's a casing detail around a door or a window that a young person would be pretty stoked to see when they master that, and everyone's going to see it, and it's a little bit more high profile. But I think a lot of these details can be I think that can be a similar approach can be taken with the behind the scenes details. It just has to be a little bit more enthusiasm, I think, across the board with these, and not just sort of, oh, we have to do this because it's whatever it's required, as opposed to something that can actually look good too.
Yeah, kind of going off of Jeremiah, like I think like growing up in the trades and in my family, like most people out there they're just told how to do something, but they're not really understanding the why, right? And I think like if you can break it down and explain to a young carpenter why it's important to do things the way that we're doing and the consequences that happen if we don't, then they get excited. Then they have purpose to do things a certain way. Whereas if it's just a routine, like do it, do it, do it, like it's just they're going through their day and they're just doing things and they don't understand why, right? But I think giving it that purpose and getting them excited and explaining to them, like, you're going to save this person X number of dollars in the future if you do this a certain way. And I think the cool part is like, not really the cool part, but kind of the cool part is we've got to work on some building envelope failures on these homes that are less than 10 years old. So our team sees firsthand, like, listen, it doesn't take long for these buildings to get destroyed if you don't do these details right off the get-go, right? And yeah, I'm fortunate. I'm like Jeremiah. I got a very young crew, and they take a lot of pride in a lot of the work that we do.
I just want to pick up on two things I've heard there that echoes for me teaching at a trade school. So if you don't know, George Brown Polytechnic has about 300 carpentry students per year. And for us, a big part of this is showing them exterior detailing and water management, because we find who it connects with the most is those students who are also inclined to choose trades like trim, right? It's non-production based. It's really kind of finicky. It requires detail and just care and understanding and time. And that kind of mindset works really well for this kind of detailing. So that's the kind of person that connects with it. The second piece is exposure. When we're teaching young trades how to frame and do foundations and do drywall, trade schools at large also need to have brakes and hand seamers, and these have to be tools that we're exposed to. So it isn't, oh, that's the aluminum trade. I don't do that, right? So that's the big thing is exposure, right? To get exposed, it's not this unknown tool because it is maybe a lot for a young person. The third thing is what Justin, you said. If we can train and support young people to learn the details, they have to know the why. Because if we graduate them or they come off your sites, they go out and say, well, this is how I used to do it. And they go, I don't do it that way. If they can't defend why you did that way and said, well, the sub-sill flash on 5 degrees helps with leaks and diverting that behind the rain screen, they don't know how to stand up for themselves to say, that just sounds fancy what Justin was doing. You're trying to say, no, I understand what he's doing. Would it work if we tried it this way with your materials? So it's like one is exposure, but two, it's help them understand why it matters so they can help work with the next team and kind of work collaboratively. So I think there's a future for these folks because it's exterior trim is what it is.
Yeah. And I think if you and really encourage excellent execution of some of these details, like instead of, tape can be put on and be really effective and look like crap. But it can also be put on with no extra time, a little straighter and look a little bit nicer so that you can step back and see something and immediately feel like you've accomplished something as opposed to just completing a task and not sort of sticking the new apprentice off in some corner to just cover over the sheathing with a house wrap or something because nobody else wants to do it or doesn't value the importance. But by encouraging good attention to detail so that you can step back and actually look at it and feel proud of something just like you would a finishing detail. I think that also would go a long way.
100%. And I mean, yes, it has to function. That is like the primary function. But if we add a little bit of form, a little bit of uniformity, if the tape is all relatively horizontal, relatively vertical, all the folds are nice and neat, it becomes very inspectable. You can quickly tell if you've made an error or you've missed something. Where if it's just kind of slapped all together, you've got to go over with a fine tooth comb to actually see if you're missing something or if there's a little, nuance that isn't just the way it should be. So like neatness counts. And also, if it looks professional, chances are maybe you are a professional. And, there's a certain pride in that. And I like to remind our young carpenters when we're working like, hey, just a little straighter, just a little neater. You want to look like a professional. And, it does take time, but eventually you see them, taking that extra second to make sure that something is straight, to make sure something is perfectly level. And there's a bit of pride in that. And that's what we want to instill. We want people to be proud of their work. We want them to be professionals. And it just takes time, but Connor already mentioned it. And so did Justin. We have to teach them the why and explain the importance of it.
Tidy trailers, tidy job sites, and clean lines. You care. There's purpose.
Oh, well, we're having fun, obviously, but we're starting to get into overtime. Do we have any more questions? Yes. I said this before, Greg. And it goes for the outside and the inside. To be a high performance builder, you don't have to know how to drop a beat, but you do have to know how to wrap. And I mean gift wrap. All right. Anybody have any parting thoughts?
I just wanted to quickly comment about, you're talking about the trades, the areas of huge growth in the high performance world is that insulator potentially taking on, more of the business of being that interior air barrier. And of course, the exterior cladding profession, maybe having to subtrade out metal flashings and incorporating more metal flashings instead of wood flashings to just make sure that the wood or sorry that water is getting down and out. And so I definitely am always looking for a great metal flashing installer because they're getting busier. And so trying to not to tell too many of my friends of my current flashing contractor because we want that level of detail and that finesse and that crafts person is just tough to find these days. So it's great that we will always have lots of work to do as we're building better, but there's some niche trades that if you wanted to either start up a business or know where there's a great opportunity for the craft to occur, it's definitely in the insulators and interior air barriers and the exterior cladding, flashing, and air barrier detailers. So let's keep teaching.
Enclosure enthusiasts. All right. If nobody has anything else, I will say thank you everyone for joining us yet again for another episode of BS&BEER Canada. We will see you on the third Thursday of next month, where Nick Jensen from Air Barrier Gaskets is joining us to talk about the enclosure. And we're going to be talking air tightness.
Beautiful. Thanks, everybody. It was a great conversation.
Thanks, everyone.
Enjoy the holiday.
See you, Sean.
All right. And if you're still here, don't forget August 26th, your flashing details somewhere on social media. And don't forget to go to flashingdetails.ca and submit your flashing detail for the flashing contest.
Please flash me and others.